Colombia has seen the highest number of victims of forced displacement this year since the signing of the peace agreement in 2016. Mexico's Supreme Court approved the holding of a recall referendum on the presidency of Andrés Manuel López Obrador, as requested by the executive. During his annual end-of-year press conference, Russian President Vladimir Putin noted the ball is in the United States court on Russia's security proposals. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. This year has seen the highest number of victims of forced displacement in Colombia since the signing of the peace agreement in 2016. According to a report by NGO, the Consultancy for Human Rights and Displacement, from January to November 2021, a total of almost 83,000 people were forcibly displaced in Colombia, representing an increase of 169% compared to 2020. There were over 160 events of mass and multiple displacement reported, with the greatest impact on Afro-Colombian and indigenous communities. 5 years after the peace accords were signed in Havana, armed conflict, land disputes, large-scale development projects, violations of human rights and humanitarian law continue, forcing tens of thousands to abandon their homes. At the close of this year's parliamentary session, Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel outlined the challenges in the face of imperialist attacks on the island's sovereignty and socialist model.
A failed state cannot withstand 62 years of blockade in the midst of a pandemic, nor can a dictatorship withstand such coups. We categorically reject those terms with which they try to label a revolution that in successive heroic acts has become an example of real dissidence to the global hegemony imposed by the dictatorship of capital.
Venezuela has detected its first cases of the Omicron variant of COVID-19 as authorities announced the beginning of the booster program. During the presentation of the National Award for Science, Technology and Innovation, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro confirmed the detection of 7 cases of Omicron and also announced the start of the booster vaccination campaign against COVID-19. From Monday, January 3rd, Venezuelans will be able to obtain booster shots of the Sputnik Light, Abdala and Sinopharm vaccines. Maduro described the discovery of the first cases of the variant in the country as inevitable, since neighboring countries such as Brazil, Colombia and Mexico had recently confirmed their first cases.
The first 7 cases of Omicron were detected in Venezuela. How did I put it, Delcy? It is inevitable. It had already arrived in Colombia a week ago. It had already arrived in Brazil a week ago.
These first 7 cases put us on high alert on the Republic and the Presidential Commission and the whole technical, scientific and medical team to guarantee and reinforce prevention and biosecurity measures.
And President Maduro also informed that 87% of the population has been vaccinated so far, with the figure expected to reach 90% by the end of this year.
We have already protected our population in the year 2020. Incredible all that has been achieved. We have already protected our people in the year 2021, and we have already reached 87% of vaccinated people in Venezuela, and we are going to meet the goal of 90% by December 31st.
Chile will apply a 4th dose of coronavirus vaccine starting in February 2022. Chilean health authorities have confirmed they will begin administering a 4th dose of the coronavirus vaccine to selected groups from February 15th. Among the priority population for these second booster shots are the elderly, health sector workers and people with other comorbidities. The Americas has now registered over 100 million cases of COVID-19 since the start of the pandemic. North America saw a 36% rise in infections last week alone, driven by the United States, according to the Pan American Health Organization. In the United States alone, 73% of the virus sequences corresponded to the Omicron variant, which has already been reported in 18 other countries and territories in the Americas. While parts of Central and South America recorded a decline in infections, a 16% increase was noted in the Caribbean. So far, 57.3% of the population in Latin America and the Caribbean has completed its vaccination schedule, according to official data. And we'll be right back after this very short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Mexico's Supreme Court approved the holding of a recall referendum on whether President Andrés Manuel López Obrador should continue his term in office, as requested by the executive. The top court ordered the National Electoral Institute to organize a referendum scheduled for April next year, in which the population will vote whether to maintain the current president until 2024. The court ruling rejected the argument presented by the Electoral Authority that there were insufficient economic resources to conduct the vote and that it should be delayed. President Andrés Manuel López Obrador himself called for the referendum on his mandate, noting it would strengthen the country's democracy and ensure he had the population's support to continue his government program. And a migrant caravan that's been traveling through Mexico since October began leaving the capital for northern states after reaching agreements with the authorities. The hundreds of mostly Central Americans who remained grouped together on a long journey in a bid to reach the United States left Mexico City in groups aboard buses for the states of Sonora, Nuevo León and Chihuahua, according to activists. Many of those who had made the journey have stopped along the way to take advantage of the possibility of staying in Mexico and receiving employment rather than continuing north. After arriving in the city on December 13th, a delegation from the remaining group negotiated with authorities from the Interior Ministry, which offered to process humanitarian visas. Given the saturation of the migration offices in the capital, it was agreed with the authorities that they would move to 3 northern districts where they would continue the process.
The joy of knowing that our paths are divided here, but in the end we all hope to get to where we want to go. It is a big step that is being taken, but thank God that they provided us with buses. God there gave us the papers that we need, because the truth is that we walk too far to say that we do not deserve it. Indeed, we deserve it and we have earned it.
They say that the caravan will never arrive. They did not give us a chance, no hope that it would arrive, but thank God that with strength, with the union that we made, despite the blows, the mistreatment, the abuse of migration, we want to do justice.
The Committee for Dialogue, Reconciliation and Peace of the National Assembly of Venezuela offered an annual report on Wednesday, a year after its installation. Made up of representatives of the main political parties in the country, the Parliamentary Committee was created last year as a space to bring together all social, economic and political sectors in the quest to build stability and peace. According to information provided by the President of the National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez, the committee plans to include judicial reform as part of the work schedule for the upcoming period, in coordination with the Parliamentary Committee responsible for adapting the Venezuelan justice system, according to proposals from different sectors. And the President of the Venezuelan Parliament announced that a meeting will be held to discuss a proposal related to judicial reform as part of the talks between the government and opposition parties.
We have welcomed the proposal made by the President of the high body of the Supreme Court, and we are calling for an extraordinary session of the Venezuelan National Assembly on December 3rd in order to initiate the debate on the reform of the constitutional law of the Supreme Court of Justice that will establish the selection and the number of principal and alternate judges.
Jorge Rodriguez also noted that this process will be conducted in line with the Venezuelan constitution.
Referring to the fact that when the law is reformed, an equal number of judges should be established, so that the principal and alternate magistrates that result from the reform are chosen as established in the Constitution.
In the framework of the meeting of the Parliamentary Committee for Dialogue, Reconciliation and Peace, opposition spokesman Luis Martinez referred to the progress of talks regarding the Venezuelan justice system.
We are moving forward in the process of institutionalizing the Venezuelan justice system. We should be and will be the justice system that Venezuela deserves once we have heard from all the sector interests in the matter, in strict compliance with the legal provisions. In the future, soon, with a justice system that goes far beyond even the reform proposed by the President of the Supreme Court of Justice, so that we will have a country with a much better democracy than one we have already enjoyed today.
The opposition spokesman also confirmed the committee's willingness to continue working on the reform of the country's justice system and to make progress in talks with the government.
In short, we are ready, willing to work the hours that are necessary not only in the already convened session on December 3rd, but in subsequent activities to be able to contribute to the justice system of Venezuela corresponding with what each of our fellow citizens deserves.
And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. During his annual end-of-year press conference, Russian President Vladimir Putin noted the ball is in the United States court on Russia's security proposals. Putin said that Washington's reaction and willingness to discuss the security proposals aimed at curbing NATO's eastward expansion were positive, a day after his foreign minister announced talks on the proposals were expected to start in January. Russia proposed a new security deal with NATO in the face of its military encirclement of the country, as well as the possibility of a Western-backed escalation of the conflict in neighbouring Ukraine. Washington responded that it's willing to discuss the security proposals, but disagrees with part of them and insists European allies must be part of the talks.
I would like to emphasize that in general, we have so far seen no positive reactions. US partners told us that they are ready to begin this discussion. This talk at the very start of next year in Geneva.
The Belgian government provisionally committed itself Thursday to phasing out the country's existing nuclear power plants by 2025. Under a complicated compromise agreement reached after all-night negotiations, an assessment will be made on whether Belgium's energy security can be assured if all 7 nuclear plants are shut down. A final decision is expected to be made in March. The plan is to use gas as a bridge towards sustainable energy sources and possible new technology nuclear options later. A political commitment to phase out nuclear energy dates back to 2003, but successive Belgian governments have stalled on the issue. The anti-nuclear Green Party is now part of the governing coalition and has been pressing for action. Hundreds of Palestinians gathered on Thursday for the funeral of a young Palestinian man shot in the back by the Israeli occupation forces. The murder of Mohammed Issa Abbas, aged 26, sparked protests in the West Bank. Abbas died from gunshot wounds to the back after the vehicle he was in was targeted by Israeli forces in the Al Amari refugee camp in Ramallah city, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. Zionist violence against Palestinians has escalated in the occupied West Bank in recent weeks. In one incident, illegal Israeli settlers attacked several Palestinian villages near Nablus city. Palestinian residents say the settlers assaulted villagers, used firearms, set some barracks on fire and also pelted stones at Palestinian homes. Sudan saw protests on Thursday to denounce sexual attacks after the United Nations said at least 13 women and girls were raped during recent mass protests against the army. Women gathered in the capital Khartoum and its twin city Durman to denounce the use of sexual violence as a weapon to silence them. The country's seen ongoing protests since Military Chief General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan led a coup on October 25th that ousted the civilian transitional government. The pro-democracy protests have been met with heavy repression, with at least 47 people killed, according to the Doctors' Committee. China is set to power the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics and Paralympics with 100% green and renewable energy. This will be the first time that all venues in any Olympic Games will be wholly powered by green energy. The feat's made possible by a flexible direct current power grid transmitting electricity produced by the plentiful wind and solar power generation capacity in Zhangjiakou, the 2022 Games co-host city, located 240 kilometers northwest of the Chinese capital. State Grid Corporation of China said it's also promoting green travel between the venues, providing a model for large-scale events in the future.
When the Winter Olympic Games begin in Beijing, all 12 competition venues will be powered by green and renewable energy for the first time in the world. In the process of snowmaking, we will use methods like multiple water storage, water recycling, and scientific and technological water saving. They will not only meet the needs of snowmaking water for the Winter Olympics, but also not cause negative impacts on local water safety and ecological environment. We will continue to vigorously implement the concept of green, sharing, openness and integrity, and run a simple, safe and wonderful Olympic Games.
In the midst of the pandemic and concerns about the future of the global economy, tensions between China and the United States continued in 2021, without Washington taking any notable steps to dismantle its policy of aggression established under the Trump administration. More on the following report by our correspondent, Aramsi Barasa.
If a year ago the arrival of Joe Biden to the presidency of the United States suggested a change in policy towards China and the possibility of dialogue, 2021 has shown the opposite, with Washington maintaining the confrontation tone initiated by Trump almost completely. China, for its part, has advocated peaceful coexistence and cooperation.
Cooperation can generate mutual benefits for both China and the United States, while confrontation will benefit no one. That is the most important lesson we've learned from the ties between the two countries. We hope that the U.S. side can fulfill its commitment and work with China to explore the path of peaceful coexistence and cooperation.
Throughout the year, the White House maintained its lines of attack on China related to the regions of Xinjiang, Hong Kong, and the South China Sea. But undoubtedly, the reinforcement of its ties with Taiwan and the encouragement of separatist forces on the island was one of the biggest maneuvers against China. Beijing has always said that it will take the necessary measures to defend its sovereignty and that it will not give up the goal of reunification under any circumstances.
Taiwan is not a pawn that can be used by others to harm us. The attempts on separatist forces seeking independence and their collusion with U.S. forces are doomed to failure. Taiwan will eventually reunify with China.
In the middle of growing concerns about the pandemic's impact on trade, China insists that cooperation and pragmatism in its dealing with Washington are key to ensuring a rapid economic recovery after the pandemic ends. The United States, however, has stopped for conflict and reinforced its strategy of sanctions and pressure against Chinese companies in strategic sectors.
The United States unscrupulously uses the pretext of national security to unreasonably repress Chinese institutions and enterprises. Such actions undermine economic principles and affect economic recovery.
While China maintains its growth and consolidates its international position thanks to the solidarity shown with the developing countries during the pandemic, the United States has shown in 2021 that regardless of who occupies the Oval Office, it has no plans to allow the second world power to unseat it from the hegemonic position it has held for the last century and will do everything possible to limit its advance.
teleSUR, Beijing, China.
And we've come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also follow us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Telegram. For teleSUR English, I'm Katrina Goss. Thank you for watching.
This 2021, we grew